Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf and to another tag video. And this is a recent one. I know I have a backlog. If you tag me in a video, like 20 years ago, I will get to it, but this is a recent one and I liked it so much, so I thought, well, what the heck, I just do a recent one. And it's the alphabet soup tag. A is for author, created by Shawn over at Shawn the Book Maniac. Links to the original tag down below, and Shawn also tagged me. The alphabet soup tag is the idea that you have one letter and then there are a couple of prompts, and if I understood Shawn correctly, he will do the whole alphabet, not in order, because after all, it's an alphabet soup. You never know which letters end up in your spoon, but you start with A. Prompt number 1, and sorry again that I look to the side, but I have to read the prompts, I can't remember them all. A is for author, a good book by an author whose first or last name starts with the letter A, and first names, Shawn says, are too easy, so bonus points for the last name and double bonus points if it's the first and the last name starting with the letter A. And you know me, always the overachiever, so I go for the double whammy, and I picked an author first and last name starting with an A, and that's Ayobami Adebayo and her book Stay With Me, published in 2017. Adebayo is a Nigerian author, and this is her debut novel following a marriage. The couple has been in love since high school, and they're married, they're happy together, but there are no children. And in the culture described in the book, that is a big problem. So the husband is supposed to take a second wife in order to produce offspring, but they don't want that, but still the wife has to get pregnant, and plot ensues. Not going to tell you what, because that would be a spoiler. I really liked the way that the book offers us a glimpse into the life in Nigeria and the culture, but it's also applicable, the story, not the actual story, but the pressures that are put on you by family or friends or surroundings or by a certain culture or society. That is something that you can relate to wherever you live. So I really liked that aspect of the book, and it was well written, and I thought for a debut novel especially, it was a really good book. Prompt number 2, A is for, well, A, the last book you read, starting with the article A. And for me, that was Fatima Farhan Mirza's book, A Place for Us, published last year in 2018. But unfortunately, I can talk about this book because it's one of the BookTube semi-final books that I'm judging, and I'm only allowed to talk about it after the judging, so after the end of July. But it was the last book I read with the article A. Number 3, A is for angry, a book that pissed you off. And I know, Shawn, you intended this prompt to pick a book that you didn't like, or that really irked you, or that made you angry. But you know me. I always, make the prompts twist so that they suit my own purpose. And I picked Anita Hill's memoir, Speaking Truth to Power, published in 1997. And the book didn't piss me off, but what happened to Anita Hill pissed me off. If you are one of the younger viewers, you probably don't remember, because it happened in the early 1990s, 1991 to be exact. And Anita Hill was a witness in the confirmation hearings of Judge Clarence Thomas, who was supposed to be, and eventually was confirmed as a Supreme Court judge. He is still sitting on the Supreme Court. And Anita Hill worked for him as a clerk, and she accused him of sexual harassment. So the book talks about the hearings, and especially how, Hill was treated by the Judiciary Committee, by the way, chaired by Joe Biden, just as a side note. And it really made me angry. And even more so when I look at, the Brett Kavanaugh hearings from last year, nothing much has changed. It's a really engaging memoir, well written, and Anita Hill had, when she wrote the memoir a couple of years after the incidents, she had enough distance and detachment to write about it in a way that was not, whiny, if you know what I mean. So I can highly recommend her memoir, and it really made my blood boil. Number 4, A is for Awesome, a top read of recent years. And Shawn said that he didn't want to, the last great book, but a great read of recent years. And I picked one of my top reads of last year, and that is Joyce Carol Oates' book, Hazards of Time Travel. I read the book twice because I loved it so much. It's a dystopian of sorts. The book opens, the first, I would say, third, 20% maybe of the book is set in a near future US that has transformed into a dictatorship where freedom is curtailed, especially freedom of speech. And we follow our main character, a young woman, a girl almost, who is supposed to give a speech as a valedictorian of her college. But her speech is controversial because she is questioning the powers. So she's arrested and exiled, quote unquote. And what that means for the purpose of the book is that she is sent back in time to the late 1950s, to a college town where she has to stay for 4 years, and if she does well, it is said, at least to her, that she will be able to return. So the majority of the main part of the book is the life of this young woman in these strange surroundings, and it covers the fact how we look at the past, how we think something was really great and inventive in science, in psychology, especially because our protagonist studies psychology, and that we now know years later that it was all invalidated. So by sending our woman back, Joyce Carol Oates is able to discuss this theme in politics, in nowadays politics, that the past was so great. I really enjoyed this book, and I'm certainly gonna read it again. So this is Joyce Carol Oates' Hazards of Time Travel. On to prompt number 5. A is for A book whose title includes at least 3 A's. And for this one, I picked Sigrid Undset, Kristin Lavransdatter, which has 3 A's. And if you count the first book, The Wreath, it has another A. But anyway, Kristin Lavransdatter, published in 1920. Undset was a Norwegian writer, and she received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1928. Kristin Lavransdatter is historical fiction. It's set in the 14th century, and essentially we follow the life of Kristin, who is the daughter of Lavran, hence Lavransdatter, from her early childhood, teenage years, up to her marriage, and the later years during her marriage. The first book is it's a multiple volume book, so it's 1,000 pages in total, but if you want to just try it out, the first book is about Kristin's youth up until her marriage. I really enjoyed the atmosphere of Norway in the 14th century. I know almost nothing about that time in that place. And I also enjoyed that we get a story from a young female's perspective, and how she comes of age and makes bad choices and good choices, especially with men, and then, how she develops as a married woman and mother. Yeah, I can certainly recommend it if you are into historical fiction and want to read something about 14th century Norway. Number 6. A is for Annoying, a character that drove you up the wall. And if you watched my video of last Sunday, my recent Buddy Reads video, you're probably not surprised of my pick, because for this prompt, I picked George Knightley, one of the main characters in Jane Austen's Emma. George Knightley is a family friend of Emma Woodhouse's family. Emma is only, 17, 18, and Knightley is in his mid-30s. He is such a pompous, condescending a-hole that he really drove me up the wall, even more so because he is not supposed to come across as that. He is supposed to come across as the voice of reason who brings Emma, from her ways that are not the way it's supposed to be. She's trying to match couples, and she's not doing a good job in evaluating people, or so she makes a lot of mistakes, and he is supposed to be the one that slowly but surely makes her see how wrong she is. So he's supposed to be the good guy, quote unquote. Didn't work for me at all. I thought he was an enormous asshole. So George Knightley is a character that definitely drove me up the wall. Prompt number 7, A is for Ambivalent. A book you're still not sure about how you feel. And again, referring to the recent buddy reads, I picked one of my recent reads, and that is Kate Chopin, The Awakening, a short story collection, but mainly it's about the novella The Awakening, published in 1899. And it's about a woman's life in New Orleans in the late 19th century, and her unhappy marriage and her attempt to break free. And as I discussed in that recent reads video last Sunday, the idea of the book sort of appealed more to me than the execution of the story. So I was disappointed in a way by the story, but I still feel that this disappointment, so I feel conflicted about, I'm not sure how I feel about the book, so I thought this was a good pick for prompt number 7, A is for Ambivalent. On to prompt number 8. A is for Anticipation, a book, new release or not, that you are looking forward to reading. And there are many books that I'm looking forward to reading, but there's one you have to pick. So I chose Sanam Maher, The Sensational Life and Death of Quandel Baloch, published in 2017. And I first came across this book thanks to Najwa, booktube channel Najwa S. I will leave a link to her wonderful channel down below. It's the story of a Pakistani internet phenomenon, a young woman who was a participant in Pakistan Idol, and she failed, and then she went on Facebook, and her videos went viral, and she was adored but also mocked, and in the end she was killed by her brother or her brother-in-law, I'm not sure. And Sanam Maher, a Pakistani author, wrote a book about her life and death. I mean, her, Baloch, not Ma. You know what I mean. I know very little. I have never heard of Baloch. I, of course, then Googled her and checked her out. But I thought this idea of, a woman becoming an internet phenomenon and clashing with her culture and dying, being murdered because of it, that sounded really interesting. And I watched an interview with the author that made my interest even bigger. I will leave a link to that interview down below. So this is one of the books that I'm really looking forward to reading. Number 9, A is for Actually, a book you didn't expect to like, but you did. And the last book that fits that prompt, or the last book I read that fits that prompt perfectly, is Melissa Broder's book, The Pisces, published in 2018. I knew Melissa Broder as from her Twitter account, So Sad Today, and I've heard a lot of negative reviews of this book, being condescending and harsh on women. So I thought I wouldn't like it, but it was longlisted for the Women's Prize. That's why I picked it up. And I'm glad I did, because I thought it was hilarious. It's quite gross at times. The sexual encounters and bodily functions are described in great detail. And it's about a woman who falls in love with a merman. So not a mermaid, but a merman. But it discusses much broader themes. It really makes satirical fun of women's preoccupation with how they look and to find a man and self-help groups. And I thought it was fantastic. I really love this book. And if you haven't read it, please do, because it is an absolute hoot. Number 10. A is for affected, a character, book, or writer you feel is pretentious. And for me, sadly enough, the first author that comes to mind whose books I really think are pretentious is Zadie Smith. I love her interviews. I love when she talks about politics or writing, in articles or when she gives a reading. But her books, I think they are extremely pretentious. The last one I tried was Swing Time. Didn't work for me at all. The story felt flat, and the way it tries to incorporate politics and colonialism or racism, no, it didn't work for me. And I'm sad, because I want to love Zadie Smith, but I think her books, for me at least, her books are pretentious. Number 11, A is for How's It Going, A. A book you like by a Canadian writer or one you want to read. And this was an easy pick for me, because if you're following me, you know how much I loved Miriam Toews' books, the ones that I read, Women Talking last year, and All My Puny Sorries, I think the year before last. So a book that I haven't read by her is A Complicated Kindness, published in 2004, and I really want to read it because I think she is a fantastic writer. Number 12, A is for Anticlimactic, a book you thought fizzled out at the end. And again, I pick a book that I talked about in my recent buddy reads, and that is Valeria Luiselli, Lost Children's Archive, published in February this year. It's a book about a road trip, a family, husband, wife, and 2 children on a trip from New York to Arizona. And the first half of the book I thought was fantastic from the perspective of the woman, and she talks about her life, and I felt really sucked in to the style and the writing. And then the perspective changed to one of the children, the 10-year-old boy. And from there on, it didn't work for me. It fizzled out. So, unfortunately, Anticlimactic, Lost Children Archive. And the last prompt, A, number 13, A is for all the booktubers, and I'm supposed to tag a swag of people, and I wrote them down, and I think some of them have been tagged already, but never mind, then you're tagged again. So I'll tag Sharon from Sharon Go Forth, a booktuber I discovered recently. You probably don't know her, so please go check her out. Brian from Bookish, Karen from Run Right Reads, Doris from All the Books, Eric from Lonesome Reader, of course, and Kendra from Kendra Winchester, and everybody else who wants to do this tag, because it's just a fabulous new tag, and we will have a lot of fun with all the letters in the alphabet soup. So this was it for today's tag. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I'm looking forward to your comments, and I'll see you all soon in the next one. Bye-bye.